All right, guys, we're back. Hope everyone had a great Christmas. We're going to do something today that do-it-yourself guys will get a big kick out of. So the port on the left has got like 24 hours of development time on it. Crazy, right? Yeah. And the port on the right, what I did was I took what I learned from doing the first port and applied it to the second port, but only took out area that absolutely needed to be taken out. How did I do? Let's take a look. This mess, last time you saw it. This 1.78, 50, 35 back cut, quickie port. Plus, plus, minus, plus, 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 plus. It's a winner. And it's a smaller port than the one that's got 24 hours on it. How'd we do as far as a swirl? Minus, minus, plus, plus, minus, minus, plus, plus. It's actually a relatively decent swirl curve. We got plenty. Remember, this is only 450 lift. 223 at 450 lift. It's really not terrible. Did the same thing on the exhaust. You got to remember, though, that's a center exhaust. It's a different shape. So I just did a quickie on the exhaust. Same idea. Took area out of spots that made a big difference on the first exhaust and applied it to the second exhaust. Really not bad. A lot of minuses, but it's pretty close. I mean, if you look at... Sorry, guys. This row here, right? It maxed out at 167 at 450, 186.5. 165, 179.5. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know whether the center ports flow better than the end ports on small block Chrysler. Don't know. But I thought it was pretty good for a quickie one. I mean, literally just taking out area that I thought needed to, and I think the short side radius is worse on the center ports. It's really, really tight. We'll show you that in a minute. Now, the really good question is, all right, the question is, the port that I did a lot of development work on, take a look at these numbers, right? Versus these numbers, right? Plus, plus, minus, minus, plus, 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 plus. Short side radius is faster on this one, but it's also basically stock height. It's a very high short side radius, which is what gives me my meat in the middle. Okay, now, which one would make more power? I don't know. I mean, for this competition, I think this is better off because it gets the air moving sooner, which we're going to desperately need, right? And it's got more meat in the middle. It even tops out better. But the speeds aren't quite as good. We're a little fast on the short side radius. Now, I'm going to go over exactly what points, what area I took out of where, and we can take a look at that. This has got, I didn't realize it was the exhaust ports on the other side of the chamber, so these numbers are actually backwards. But I did minuses and pluses on the speeds. Like this one was only off by one digit. Okay, so you got a minus, 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 plus, minus, minus. The minuses give us a little bit less flow. That makes sense. Okay, now taking a look down its throat, the original port, right? Notice our blue is a slightly different angle on this one. I also think I squirted a little more blue on this one. When you see the chamber, you'll see what I'm talking about. But yeah, what got done here is, yes, I did have to open up the pinch, but I didn't necessarily open up the bottom of the pinch as much as the first one, because the first one liked the flow ball there. So I left that a little more meaty. Now you have to remember, these were already roughed out. So they've already had a good amount of metal taken out. So in a lot of spots, I just had to measure the thickness and make it close to this port, but not necessarily identical. I do have to CC these for you guys, and I'll give you, I really wanted to do that before I did this. I totally forgot. And I hate CCing, so. But I'm willing to bet the port on the right is a smaller port that flows better, so it would have way better port energy, would make better torque. Let's take a look at the chamber. Okay. Now, I didn't change the angle of the fin behind the guide. I kept it about the same as this one as best I could. You can still see we do have liquid issues. I mean, you can see we do have some puddling here. We got a little more around this plug than I'd like. They did a decent job around the chamber. Okay. As far as the chamber itself, I didn't touch any of this. I just did my plunge cut 35, and then I shaped it with the stone, with the burr a little bit. You want a good angle on that so you get good pressure recovery coming out of the port. Okay, inside the port, I think we look pretty good. The valve seems to have less on it than the port before that we were doing. So the port that has more development has more blue on the valve, I would say. I don't know if that's good or bad, to be honest. I'm thinking, considering how it goes, the rest of my ports should look like this. Yeah, I could probably go through my airspeeds and tweak it up a little bit, see if there's a little more area on that short side radius, and tame those airspeeds down a little bit, but I like the meat in the curve, so that might be a loser. And as you can tell, you know, this one I went down the rabbit hole and basically lost my mind and was not making gains. I was making losses. So knowing when to stop is really critical, and I haven't figured that out yet. I always think I could fix it somehow, and not necessarily. Sometimes you should just be done. Okay, let's not forget the chamber. You got to remember, this one swirls the opposite direction, right? And we have a really long drip there. I think I squirt too much fuel, too much dicum, right? You can see where it would usually have a nice dip. This looks like it's got extra, but it's good all the way around. It goes to about that far. Overall, I don't think that's bad. You let me know if you think that's terrible, guys. Okay, old port is on the right, new port is on the left. So, what did I do to this? I cut it for a 50. Top cut's 35. Bottom cut is a 60, and then I touched the bottom with a 70 because I didn't feel like cutting one of my stones to 65. It actually seems like this port is a little bit better as far as core shift than the first port. And it probably has a little bit tighter throat because it's had a lot less work than this one. And we were really hurting on throat ratio, so I'm sure that helped. As far as the width of the bowl, they're pretty close. I was actually able to make the new bowl a touch bigger. I didn't do it on purpose. I Was probably just not measuring it right. But the bowl on the new one is a touch bigger. Like I said, it had better course shift, so it was easier to do that. I probably have a little more area I could even this one up. I don't know if it's going to make that much difference, to be honest. So what did I do, right? The back of the bowl, right? The back of my bowl here is basically stock shape. Why don't I want to dig that out? Well, as of right now, I can't even measure the higher flow lifts. So I want to keep that relatively tight to boost my mid-range. Right, we widened quite a bit here. I definitely raised the roof a bit. Did I raise it a ton? No, but it's nice and thick. I could raise it quite a bit. But I was experimenting with this port, you know, what regular guys can do without killing themselves on these and get decent flows out of it. So let's take a look at the short side. Okay, this is the first developed port. You can see a little bit of the wing in there. Right, you can see it's definitely been dropped probably about 1/10 of an inch. This one's higher. It does have some layback to it, and I did widen it a bit. That's all I did to that short side radius. Widened it, laid it back a little bit. Did not take out a huge amount of metal in it. Seems to work better than the one that's had a ton of work on it. Okay, the first port is on the left. New port is on the right. It definitely looks like I squirted a little extra blue in it. Obviously, that bowl doesn't have as nearly as nice a shape as this, because it doesn't have the time I put into it. It was kind of an experiment. I'm like, you know what? And I've done this before. Put a ton of development work into something and then go to the next port and say, you know what? I remember where I needed area on the last one. I'm just going to do those spots. And that's usually a winner. That's why it's always nice to have an extra head. You could literally ruin. Really nice if you can cut them up and measure how thick you can go in spots. That's really nice. I don't actually have that with these, so if these get used, they have to get used the way they are. All right, I think I went over the intake enough. Let's take a look at the exhaust. Okay, these exhausts were roughed out, but not much was done to them. So I was able to take some metal out on either side of the guide to give it a nice curvature out. I took metal off both sides of the bowl, but the back of the bowl stayed as stock as it could be with cleaning it up. I did my radius coming from my 50, but these don't have much of a throat. If we went to a 1.6, we would have a much better throat, and it would probably work better. Okay, the port still has a bump in it because you can't take it all the way out without getting that metal really thin. And I'm not doing that. Okay, I don't even know if I've shown you guys this view before, but on that exhaust, you know, how can I say that? You need to have a throat, and you need to have a nice radius out of the throat into the port. Unfortunately, these ports are so heavily angled that there's not a lot of material to work with. Now, this is the rectangular exhaust port. This is the first one we developed. It does flow better than the one we're going to look at next, which is, let me give light. Okay, you can tell I didn't spend as much time on this, but if you take a look at the left side of that port, it's really low. The right side isn't as bad, but it's still not as good as this one. This one's got a better short side radius. See how it's taller? And it's kind of interesting how they design these Chrysler ports. I don't know. I just don't get the logic. Maybe somebody can explain it to us. You can see my radius is not that great. You can still see that 60 on there pretty easily. Let's turn that around. Okay, the floor there's not much you can do with. As far as I'm concerned, it's already too low. So you take the lumps and bumps off of it, and that's it. This turn they have in the bottom of the floor here, what are you going to do with that? It's too big already. Now, this whole port, it's noticeably wider than the rectangle. Let's take a look at that. Okay. That's how much wider it is than the rectangular port. So they put more area in this part of the port, and then it necks down at the bottom. Now, having the nice wide roof, I would think would be an advantage. I don't know what they were thinking at the bottom. They should have just made the damn thing more rectangular, and it would have been better. So, what did I do on the port? Took the lumps and bumps off, raised the roof a little bit. Not a lot, because I don't want to break through the water. And I made the bowl wider down at the bottom. The back of the bowl is practically stock. That's it. And it was 165 CFM at 450 lift, which is not terrible. Okay? Remember, I like small, fast exhaust ports. Okay. You can still see the lumps and bumps on the roof. I would have never designed it like that, to be honest. But that's what it is. That's what we can do with it. And overall, it works pretty good. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me and putting up with this project. Let me know if you like this video. I think overall, any do-it-yourself guys would, if you're heading in this path, this is not bad. Okay? I think you can get a darn good running engine. Especially a smaller engine. With those flows right there. I don't think that's off. Remember, it's only 450 lift. Those are pretty much hanging with the E7s I did for David Vizard that made 361 horse on a 306 with a tiny flat tappet cam. If you guys haven't seen that video, you need to watch that video. It's great. And David also posted the 742 horsepower 421 I helped on. Did the intake on that. Unfortunately, he didn't mention me in the video, but the first time he posted it, I went on the comments and I reminded him. He's like, "Oh man, I forgot." No big deal. I cut him some slack. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. See you soon.